Hello guys, welcome to ASPE Anatomy and Physiology Screencast Exam 1. So this is the first in a series of 3 Anatomy and Physiology screencasts. As a result of this, what I need you to do is kind of follow this kind of exam success cycle. So basically, what's going to happen, you'll get a slide with a question. When you get that question, okay, you need to check the mark allocation. Following that, you need to circle the important bit of information. Following that, there will be a new slide. Okay, for those people who are not quite sure what the answer is going to be with the memory method, I will explain how the memory method links to the question. Then following that, your job is to try and translate the memory method into an answer which you can extend with an example. So that's going to be the focus. There'll be 3 slides. Slide 1, question. Slide 2, a way to remember it that will be linked to the exam question. I will tell you that. Okay, and then from there, your job is to try and work out what the answer is going to be. Now, I might actually give you some of the key points in the memory slide, but if you can do it without, pause it early, that's great. Some people, your job is just to pause it as soon as you see the question, and I've talked through it, pause it, and just write down the memory method that you already know. Okay, so I will need everybody when they come to revision sessions, whether it's Saturday for Worcester Sixth Form College students or for any other students, it needs to be at your session. You will have a grid sent to you where you need to put in the questions will be in there. You just need to write down the memory method that's used and how you translate it. That is preparation for either Saturday or next Wednesday. Okay, thank you. Okay, so first question then. All right, so we're looking at this. So during both the upward and downward phase of the bicep curl, describe the role of the bicep brachii. Now, this is a popular question that is used to kind of stump people. It's not your traditional question where you have agonist, antagonist, articulating bones and movements. This is a question that requires you to have a specific formula in order to answer it. So that's your key bit. So if we go to the memory method way then, what I need you to do is when you imagine on the upward phase, you need to imagine you're going to say to yourself, to imagine you've got a bicep curl, you're curling up on the way up, I go con, then on the way down on the downward phase, I go knee. Okay, I go con, I go knee, I go con, I go knee. And if you keep that rhythm in your head, it will give you the key roles of the bicep brachii both in the upward and downward phase. So see what you feel with that. If that makes sense to you, fine. If not, you can have a look through and see what it translates to. Okay, so if you have a look on there, so the upward phase, the bicep brachii is the agonist. Okay, it performs a concentric contraction as the muscle shortens into tension. That must be in there. And if you want the extra bonus mark, you can say what movement it causes, which is flexion. So as you can see there, upward, I go con, I go con, I go con. And then on the downward phase, you're saying I go knee. Okay, so you can go from there then, agon. Okay, so the bicep brachii remains the agonist. Okay, it does not turn to the antagonist. It acts as a resistance against gravity. Okay, second thing is it performs an eccentric muscle contraction because the bicep brachii will lengthen under tension. Okay, and finally, if you wanted to add the extra E on, so agony, because on the way down, you can often feel that your muscle is in absolute agony on the negative phase or the downward phase. It causes extension at the elbow joint. Now, I can't confirm the movements for every question, but what you can confirm is any muscle, if it talks about a single muscle group on the upward and downward phase, this formula will work. I go con, I go knee. I go con, I go knee. That is something that you should be able to remember and get you 4 marks. Okay, so next question then. So we're going on here then. Explain how a mix of muscle fibre types are linked to the success or activity choice of a performer. So how does a mix of muscle fibres influence somebody's choice in activity? So the key thing on this is not a question asking about structural and functional characteristics of muscle fibres. This is the more tricky one that people tend to struggle with. Now, I didn't put the mark allocation here. It would be a 3-mark question. So 3 marks. What we need to do then, first thing, you need to consider the following, that how many types of muscle fibres are there, category wise? Well, there's 2, and then we need to talk about how 2 things can mix. The analogy I'm going to give you, so mix, there are 3 ways you can mix 2 items or 2 things. So we're going to use a kind of analogy of vodka and Coke here. So if you imagine you have a high amount of vodka and a low amount of Coke, that will be a very alcoholic drink. Okay, if you have a high Coke and low vodka, that will be a very low alcohol drink. If you have an even vodka and an even Coke, you have a mix. Now, if you can see what I'm trying to do here, you need to be talking and translate this now into the 2 types of fibres. So if you have a high percentage of fast twitch fibres and a low percentage of slow twitch fibres, this would mean you would do more anaerobic sports. Okay, you see what I'm going there? And if you move it through how it translates, you go in here, so I'll put it into kind of technical terminology. High percentage of fast twitch fibers. As you can read, I'll let you just read that and pause it. Okay, so they're the 3 marks you would get. You can mix 2 items in 3 ways. High percentage of one, low of the other, high percentage of the other, then a low of the other, or an even mix. And that will dictate which activities you're more likely to take part in. So next question then. Explain the positive effects of different types of physical activity on the musculoskeletal system. This is most likely to be as a 10-mark question, but if it did come up like this just on its own, this is the type of stuff you would need to talk about. So the first thing we're looking at here, musculoskeletal system, and the thing we're looking for is the positive. It could be critically evaluated. So for a positive, you're going to get a key acronym. Okay, the acronym or mnemonic you're going to use for this is POSINGOP. So if you look at how I've structured it here, so P-O-S SING OWP. For each bit you need to say what it is, why it happens, why it's a benefit, where it takes place, and an example linked to the type of activity that it's talking about. Okay, so what do those things kind of link to? So P refers to peak bone density. O refers to prevention of osteoporosis. Then we're looking about S, which is linked to stability or joint stability. Sing, why are you singing? Well, you're singing our car, lig, lub, mus. Our car, lig, lub, mus. And you keep singing that tune, so our car, lig, lub, mus. So you've got articular cartilage, ligaments, lubrication, and surrounding muscles. So that is your key bit there. From there, this helps prevent osteoarthritis. Okay, what is it? Explain it. The penultimate kind of advantage is weight management, okay, from taking part in physical activity. And the final one we'll refer to is posture and alignment. Okay, so again, you're looking at what, why, where, and then an example. So if we have a look from there, the good thing about this link is obviously positive effects. The first 3 letters of the kind of acronym are POS, so that links. If we go through here, I'll let you pause it and start to think about how you add stuff onto it. Okay, so you can just pause it now and look at that. I'm going to move on to the next question. So going on from there, explain the negative effects of different types of physical activity on the musculoskeletal system. So now we've got to put a negative in on this. So how do we work that? Okay, well the way that we work that is we kind of go through this. So basically we're going to use this mnemonic, which is a sentence to help us remember. Growing places stress on cartilage and ligaments when playing tennis or golf. I think I missed a bit off there. So when playing tennis or golf. Now that then directly translates, okay, so growing places translates to growth plate. Stress translates to stress fractures. On translates to osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis refers to articular cartilage degeneration, so that's just to make sure that you can talk a little bit about then. And then we talk about kind of ligament tears, e.g. anterior cruciate ligaments, and then finally when playing golf and tennis. The final kind of musculoskeletal kind of disease or kind of injury you could get are golfer's elbow or tennis elbow. Translated, it will look just like that. Okay, so if you want to have a look at these kind of activities and how you do that, carry on. Okay, pause it and just make sure you can put that into kind of continuous prose. Now, going on. How will neural control lead to an increase in heart rate during exercise? This would be a 5 to 6 mark question. 6 mark, it has come up before, which has said about lead to an increase in heart rate during exercise, or how would it kind of regulate heart rate during exercise and recovery. As soon as you see the word neural, you need to make a translation. The translation is receptors. Whenever neural comes up in a question, you have to translate it to receptors. There are 3 receptors that are used throughout the course, and those will then dictate how you increase or decrease heart rate. The receptors, you need to know what they are and what they detect an increase of or decrease of, depending on whether it's exercise or recovery. So going on from there, you've got your key bits here. So proprioceptors detect an increase in movement, baroreceptors detect an increase in blood pressure, chemoreceptors detect an increase in CO2 and a decrease in O2. Okay, this information is sent to the cardiac control center. This activates the sympathetic nervous system, which will then stimulate the accelerator nerve, which finally stimulates the SA node to lead to an increase in heart rate. If the question asks about exercise, you stop there. If it asks for you to talk about how neural control kind of regulates heart rate during recovery, okay, the receptors detect get the opposite because you're slowing down. Instead of everything increasing, it's decreasing. Okay, this information is sent to the CCC, the Cardiac Control Centre, but instead of this, kind of the sympathetic nervous system, it's sent to the parasympathetic nervous system because it paralyzes the nerve and the speed at which your kind of heart is beating. This travels to the vagus nerve, and this will then cause the SA node to decrease heart rate. Okay, moving on. So, define stroke volume, give a resting value. Describe the changes to stroke volume from rest to maximal values. This is a really tough question, okay? This is why I definitely need this on. Last came up 2011, okay, and caused a lot of problems. It's not asking about venous return, it's not asking about intrinsic control. If you get a question on definition of stroke volume, the first thing you'll notice is that stroke is a singular, okay? So it has to talk about the volume of blood ejected from the left ventricle per beat, okay, and a resting value. Now the key thing I need to focus on with you in here, how do you remember a way to get this stuff onto paper? You do the following. So stroke, first of all, for the definition, remember it's a singular, so it's the volume of blood ejected from the heart, from the left ventricle per beat. Then the number 60 is absolutely vital. If you remember stroke, imagine a pet, I don't know if you've got a dog, a cat or whatever, when you think of stroking them, okay, imagine 60 strokes. The number 60 is absolutely huge. Why? Because we have to talk about a resting value, 60 millilitres. Then we have to talk about the change to maximal values, 160 millilitres. But the most important thing is we have to talk about the level of exercise at which stroke volume is reached, maximal stroke volume is reached, and that's 60% of exercise intensity. So if I translate that for you, you can see how this works. So basically we're saying then, volume of blood ejected from the heart per beat, okay, the rest values are 60 millilitres, okay, this leads to, it moves up to maximal values, which is 160, but can go up to 200, but let's just keep it to these 60s. Okay, and the description of the changes are, there's an initial increase alongside exercise intensity. However, maximal stroke volume, 160 millilitres, is reached at 60% of exercise intensity. And the reason why this happens is when you're exercising, there's a shorter diastolic filling phase. So the heart can't fill up as quickly. So basically, it ejects the blood quicker. Okay, so it's at 60% of exercise intensity. I say to students on this, you need to learn that concept. 60 at rest millilitres, 160 at max. However, max stroke volume is reached at 60% of exercise intensity due to a shorter diastolic filling phase. Okay, going on to the next one then. We'll leave this one. Okay, so we'll go on to explain how the conduction system controls the cardiac cycle. So with this one, conduction system cardiac cycle did come up 2 years ago. We'll just put it in for a bit of practice. So you're going through on this. So when you're talking about the conduction system control of the cardiac cycle, you have to go through the following order: fill, impulse, empty, receive, empty. Now, whenever you're talking about filling, you're talking about diastole. Whenever you're talking about emptying, you're talking about systole. So wherever there is a kind of a fill or an empty, you're basically talking about diastole or systole, which is a cardiac cycle. And we always start from the top and move down. So it's always atria first, and then ventricle seconds. When you first fill, it'll be atria diastole. Second fill, it'll be ventricular diastole. Then you go onto the conduction system, which is talking about your SA node, AV node, Purkinje fibers, bundle of His and Purkinje fibers. So you've got these key things here. My thought is, if you paused it now, could you use these to translate into this answer? Okay, so let's pause it and see if you get it and that stuff makes sense to you. I'm going to move on now because I've only got a minute or so left on this screencast. So going on from there then, 2 ways oxygen is transported around the body, pretty easy. Explain how smoking affects oxygen transport. So that'll be another 3 marks. I'm not so bothered about oxygen, how it's transported, very easy. What I am interested is you understand the effect of smoking. Now the memory method I want you to move here is to kind of re-spell smoking. So instead of being smoking, you're going to put a C, okay, and you're going to put an M, and then you've got a dash, and then an O, and then a K, and then a capital H. Now basically the reason why you're doing that is because we need to change that spelling to remember that as soon as you smoke, it's okay, there is a gas that's released that's different to normal. So that then translates, so carbon monoxide is released. Okay, carbon monoxide basically has a higher affinity with hemoglobin than hemoglobin has with oxygen. So this then reduces the oxygen hemoglobin association, which in turn reduces the amount of oxygen that's diffused into the working muscles, which in turn allows you to work aerobically for less time. Okay, so if I put that into there, so carbon monoxide attaches with oxygen, higher affinity with oxygen, hemoglobin, this reduces oxygen